Would the gun laws we have today have allowed Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh to elude arrest?
Maybe not everything is true that you've heard about me.
For example, what's not true?
But the verdict doesn't diminish the great sadness that occurred in Oklahoma City 2 years ago. Delivered the bomb to the Murrah building in a truck that he rented under a false name, and having detonated the bomb.
And I'm not putting on a game face. I'm not conning anybody. I'm just being me.
McVeigh's devastating act. Timothy James McVeigh was an American domestic terrorist whose heinous act of violence shook the nation. On April 19, 1995, he perpetrated the Oklahoma City bombing, a devastating attack that resulted in the loss of 168 lives, including 19 children, and left 680 individuals injured. The explosion obliterated a significant portion of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. This tragic event stands as the most fatal act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. A Gulf War veteran, McVeigh's motives were rooted in a deep-seated animosity towards the federal government. He sought retribution for what he perceived as egregious action, including the 1993 Waco siege and the 1992 Ruby Ridge incident. McVeigh viewed his act as a means to incite a revolution against a government he deemed tyrannical. He rationalized the bombing as a legitimate tactic in his misguided fight against perceived oppression. Shortly after the bombing, McVeigh was apprehended and faced a barrage of charges, including the use of a weapon of mass destruction. In 1997, he was convicted on all counts and subsequently sentenced to demise. McVeigh met his end on June 11, 2001 through lethal injection at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Most people in this country think you are the face of evil, don't they?
They do. But sitting down here now,
The jury has spoken, and their verdict is entitled to respect.
But the verdict doesn't diminish the great sadness that occurred in Oklahoma City 2 years ago.
Intolerance which have divided us may crumble, that suspicions disappear.
His ending transpired relatively swiftly, occurring just over 6 years after the devastating attack, an expedited timeline compared to many other inmates on Demise Row. McVeigh's malevolent act left an indelible mark on American history, serving as a stark reminder of the potential for violence born out of extreme ideologies. His ending, while bringing a sense of closure to some, also steered complex debates about the demise penalty and the judicial process. The Oklahoma City bombing remains a somber chapter in the nation's collective memory, a testament to the enduring impact of domestic terrorism. Early life. Timothy James McVeigh was born on April 23, 1968 in Lockport, New York to Noreen Mildred Mickey Hill and William McVeigh. He was the second of 3 children and the only son in the family. McVeigh's Irish-American heritage is traced back to his great-great-grandfather, Edward McVeigh, who immigrated from Ireland in 1866 and settled in Niagara County. His parents divorced when he was 10, and McVeigh was primarily raised by his father in Pendleton, New York. He experienced bullying at school, which led him to retreat into a world of fantasies where he imagined confronting his tormentors. This early experience influenced his later belief that the US government represented the ultimate bully. As a teenager, McVeigh displayed a keen interest in computers, eventually hacking into government systems using the pseudonym The Wanderer. He earned recognition as the most promising computer programmer in his senior year at Star Point Central High School. Despite this, his grades were modest until he graduated in 1986. McVeigh's fascination with firearms began during his high school years, introduced to him by his grandfather. He harbored dreams of becoming a gun shop owner and often brought guns to school to impress his peers. After graduation, he delved deeper into gun rights and the Second Amendment, avidly reading publications like Soldier of Fortune. He briefly attended Bryant and Stratton College but dropped out. Following his departure from college, McVeigh worked as an armored car guard, displaying a notable obsession with firearms. His co-workers recalled instances where he arrived at work heavily armed, leaving a lasting impression on them. McVeigh's military service and ideological shift. Timothy McVeigh's military career began in May 1988 when he enlisted in the U.S. Army. He underwent basic training and advanced individual training at Fort Benning, Georgia. During his military service, McVeigh demonstrated a keen interest in firearms, explosives, and sniper tactics, which he studied in his spare time. McVeigh and his future co-conspirator Terry Nichols became close friends during their time in the Army. They were both stationed at Fort Riley in Junction City, Kansas, where they met Michael Fortier, who would later become an accomplice in the Oklahoma City bombing. McVeigh excelled as a gunner, particularly with the 25mm cannon of the Bradley fighting vehicles used by the 1st Infantry Division. He achieved the rank of sergeant and earned a reputation for assigning undesirable tasks to black servicemen and using racial slurs.
Maybe not everything is true that you've heard about me.
For example, what's not true?
Drastic crime from ever occurring again. Thank you.
Chilling interviews in this broadcast's history. Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber.
Would the gun laws we have today have allowed Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh to elude arrest?
He wrote letters to newspapers and politicians, criticizing taxes and government control. He moved around, settling on a farm in Michigan owned by Terry Nichols' brother. McVeigh's behavior became increasingly erratic, including claims of a government-implanted microchip and obsessive gambling. McVeigh's involvement in anti-government sentiments deepened. He traveled to Waco, Texas during the Waco siege to show support for those resisting federal authorities. He began working at gun shows, distributing pro-gun rights and materials, and expressing his belief in the need for citizens to defend themselves against government control. His association with gun show circuit allowed him to engage with like-minded individuals and further fueled his anti-government sentiments. He sold survival items and copies of the Turner Diaries, a novel with extremist views. This period of McVeigh's life played a significant role in shaping his extremist ideology, ultimately leading to the tragic events of the Oklahoma City bombing. Arrest and trial. The aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing triggered an intensive manhunt led by the FBI. Through forensic investigation, they identified the vehicle used in the attack as a rented Ryder box truck from Junction City, Kansas. With the assistance of a forensic artist, an accurate sketch of the suspect was created based on witness descriptions. A motel manager identified the sketch as Timothy McVeigh. On April 21, 1995, while traveling in Oklahoma, McVeigh was stopped by State Trooper Charles J. Hanger for driving without license plates and possessing an illegal firearm. McVeigh was arrested and his concealed weapon permit, which was not valid in Oklahoma, was confiscated. He was wearing a shirt with Abraham Lincoln's image and the motto Sic Semper Tyrannis, thus always to tyrants, words associated with John Wilkes Booth after assassinating Lincoln.
Been given a ticket and told to report back in another couple of weeks or so.
Delivered the bomb to the Murrah building in a truck that he rented under a false name, and having detonated the bomb.
On June 2, 1997, McVeigh was found guilty on all counts. He was charged with the slaying of 8 federal agents who were on duty during the bombing, along with conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and destruction of a federal building. The jury subsequently recommended the demise penalty. While McVeigh was tried and sentenced for federal charges related to the demises of federal agents, the state of Oklahoma did not pursue separate slaying charges for the other 160 victims, as McVeigh was already sentenced to demise. In his final statement, McVeigh referenced Justice Louis Brandeis in Olmstead versus United States, highlighting the government's influential role as an example for the nation. Incarceration and ending. Timothy McVeigh's demise sentence was initially postponed due to appeals. His request for a nationally televised ending was denied, and an internet company's attempt to broadcast it was also unsuccessful. While incarcerated at USP Florence AdMax, McVeigh was housed in a section known as a Bomber's Row alongside other notorious figures, including Ted Kaczynski and Ramzi Youssef. Throughout this period, McVeigh expressed remorse for the lives lost in the bombing but maintained a belief in the necessity of his actions. He indicated that he would rather face ending than spend life in prison. McVeigh was transferred to the federal demise row at USP Terre Haute in Indiana. As the scheduled ending date of May 16, 2001 approached, thousands of previously withheld documents were provided to McVeigh's lawyers, prompting a 1-month stay. The ending was rescheduled for June 11.
Oklahoma City was an attack on innocent children and defenseless citizens.
And I'm not putting on a game face. I'm not conning anybody. I'm just being me.
Plea of conspiracy, guilty on all 11 federal charges that he faced in the Oklahoma City bombing trial.
Recently, I spoke with McVeigh's attorney, Stephen Jones, to find out more about his relationship with the Oklahoma City bomber.
McVeigh had considered scattering his ashes at the site of the memorial, but ultimately decided against it, deeming it too vengeful. Psychiatrist John Smith assessed McVeigh as a person who had allowed rage to consume him, leading to the tragic act of violence. McVeigh's IQ was measured at 126, indicating above average intellectual capability. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.